The morning sun cast long shadows across the playground of Riverside Elementary School when the ships arrived. They appeared without warning, massive, dark vessels that blotted out the sky like storm clouds made of metal and malice. Children pointed upward in wonder, their innocent minds unable to comprehend the horror that was about to unfold. Sarah Matthews was pushing her daughter Emma on the swing when the first beam struck. A pillar of purple light descended from the largest ship, and where it touched the ground, children simply vanished. Not vaporized, not destroyed, just gone, leaving behind only the faint shimmer of displaced air and the echo of their laughter. "Mommy!" Emma screamed as another beam swept across the playground. Sarah lunged forward, but the light was faster. In an instant, her 7-year-old daughter was torn from her arms, pulled upward by forces beyond human understanding. Around the playground, the same scene played out dozens of times. Parents reached for empty air where their children had been moments before. The ships departed as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving behind a community shattered by an incomprehensible loss. Within hours, reports flooded in from around the globe. London, Tokyo, Mumbai, Sao Paulo. Everywhere, the story was the same. Alien vessels had descended and taken children, always children, between the ages of 5 and 15. No demands were made, no communication attempted. They simply took and left. Admiral Rebecca Chun stood in the command center of the United Earth Defense Force, staring at the global map dotted with red markers. Each marker represented a site where children had been taken. The number was staggering. Over 50,000 children from every continent, every nation, every walk of life. "Do we have any idea what they want?" she asked Commander Torres, her chief intelligence officer. "Nothing concrete," Torres replied, his weathered face grim. "The only pattern we can discern is the age range. They only took children between 5 and 15. No adults, no infants, no teenagers older than 15. And no communication from them at all? None. Our attempts to reach them have been met with complete silence." Chun turned to face the room full of military personnel and scientists. "Then, we operate under the assumption that these children are in immediate danger. I want every available resource focused on tracking those ships and finding our kids." Dr. Elizabeth Hawthorne, the lead xenobiologist on the team, stepped forward. "Admiral, I've been analyzing the energy signatures left by their extraction beams. The technology is unlike anything we've encountered, but there's something disturbing about the precision. This wasn't random. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Meaning, they've been watching us, studying us. This was planned, possibly for years or even decades. The question is why children specifically? In the depths of space, aboard the flagship of the Zalarian Collective, High Commander Vexlani examined the cargo manifest with satisfaction. The harvest had been even more successful than projected. 53,000 young humans now rested in stasis pods within the cargo holds of his fleet. Commander, his aide, Subcommander Krill, approached with a data pad. "The humans have been attempting to communicate with us. Shall we respond?" Vexlani's forearms gestured dismissively. "Ignore them. They're nothing more than a primitive species that has somehow managed to avoid extinction longer than expected. Once we process their young, they will pose no threat to the collective's expansion into this sector." The Zalarians were an ancient race, having conquered dozens of worlds over millennia. They had perfected the art of subjugation through a method they called neural reconstruction. Young minds, still developing and malleable, could be reprogrammed to serve the collective unquestioningly. It was more efficient than simply enslaving adults who retained too much of their original personality and were prone to rebellion. "Have the processing facilities been prepared?" Vexlani asked. "Yes, Commander. The neural reconstruction chambers are online and ready. The first batch of human younglings will be processed within the cycle." "Excellent. Begin with the specimens showing the highest cognitive markers. Their species may be primitive, but our scans indicated some promising intellectual capacity among their young." Back on Earth, The search for the missing children had become a global obsession. Every government had committed resources to the effort. Radio telescopes scoured the cosmos for any sign of the alien fleet. Satellite arrays searched for energy signatures. The internet buzzed with theories and desperate pleas from parents. Sarah Matthews had not slept in 3 days. She sat in the command center that had been hastily established in the town hall, surrounded by other parents who wore the same haunted expression. They had become an unofficial council of the desperate, pressing authorities for updates and demanding action. "There has to be something," she said for the 100th time. "You can't just steal 50,000 children and disappear without a trace." Agent Williams from the FBI looked up from his computer. "Mrs. Matthews, I understand your frustration, but do you—" Sarah's voice cracked. "Do you really understand what it's like to watch your child vanish into thin air? To know that somewhere out there, Emma is scared and alone and calling for her mommy?" Before Williams could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the facility. Dr. Hawthorne burst through the doors, her face flushed with excitement and terror. "We found them," she announced. The Deep Space Array picked up their energy signature. They're approximately 12 light-years away, in orbit around a dead star system. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through the comm system. "All senior staff to the command center immediately. We have a situation." Within minutes, the room was packed with military officials, scientists, and government representatives. Chen stood before a massive display screen showing a three-dimensional map of local space. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've located the alien fleet. They're holding position in the Kepler 442 system. Our long-range sensors indicate at least 30 vessels, including what appears to be a massive command ship." She paused, her expression grave. "We've also detected something else. Energy readings consistent with large-scale industrial operations." Dr. Hawthorne stepped forward. "Based on the energy patterns and the heat signatures we're detecting, it appears they're running some kind of processing facility. The implications are—" She trailed off, unable to voice what everyone was thinking. "How long would it take us to reach them?" Sarah asked from the back of the room. "Mrs. Matthews," Chen said gently, "you shouldn't be how long." Sarah's voice was steel. "With our fastest ships, approximately 18 months at maximum burn. But, Mrs. Matthews, we don't have the capability to mount a rescue mission at that distance. Our ships aren't designed for extended deep space combat operations." "Then, we build new ones," Sarah said. "We build whatever it takes. The resources required would be astronomical. We're talking about technology that doesn't exist yet, ships that would take years to design and build. Then, we start now." Sarah slammed her hand on the table. "Every minute we waste talking about how impossible it is, those children are 1 minute closer to whatever horror those things have planned for them." The room fell silent. Finally, President Harrison, who had been listening via video link, spoke up. "Admiral Chun, I want options on my desk within 24 hours. Cost is no object. If we have to bankrupt every nation on Earth to save those children, then that's what we'll do." Over the following weeks, humanity mobilized in ways not seen since the World Wars. Every space-capable nation contributed resources. Private companies offered their most advanced technologies. Scientists who had spent their careers competing with each other suddenly found themselves working side by side, united by a common purpose. The project that emerged was codenamed Operation Homecoming. The plan was audacious. Build a fleet of ships capable of faster-than-light travel using experimental technology that had never been tested beyond theoretical models. The ships would have to be armed with weapons systems advanced enough to take on an alien fleet with unknown capabilities. Dr. Marcus Webb, formerly of NASA's Experimental Propulsion Division, found himself leading a team of 200 of the world's brightest minds. "We're essentially trying to compress 50 years of technological development into 18 months, he told his exhausted team during one of their daily briefings. "It's impossible by every metric we have." "Impossible isn't in our vocabulary anymore," replied Dr. Yuki Tanaka, who had abandoned her comfortable position at Tokyo University to join the project. Those children don't have 50 years. They probably don't have 18 months. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Raj Patel, a theoretical physicist who had been relegated to basement laboratories for pursuing fringe research into quantum fold mechanics, suddenly found his work at the center of everything. The key is understanding that space-time isn't a barrier to overcome, but a fabric to fold, he explained to the assembled team. If we can create a controlled quantum fold, we can reduce the distance to the target system from 12 light years to a matter of hours. And the energy requirements? Webb asked. Massive. We need to harness the entire output of our fusion plants, plus some we haven't built yet. But it's theoretically possible. Theoretically, Tanaka muttered. How many children are we willing to lose to theoretically? Meanwhile, intelligence agencies around the world had been working around the clock to understand their enemy. The aliens had revealed little about themselves during the brief encounter, but every scrap of data was analyzed and reanalyzed. General Harrison of the Joint Chiefs presented their findings to the project leaders. Based on the limited information we have, we're dealing with a species that's technologically superior, but not invincible. Their ships show signs of conventional propulsion and energy systems just more advanced than ours. This suggests they can be fought. What about their motivations? Asked Dr. Chun, Admiral Chen's daughter, who had joined the project as a xenopsychologist. Unknown. The fact that they specifically targeted children suggests either a cultural practice, a biological need, or some kind of industrial purpose. None of the options are good. As months passed, reports began filtering in from deep space monitoring stations. The energy signatures from the Kepler 442 system had increased dramatically. Whatever the aliens were doing to the children, they were accelerating the process. Sarah Matthews had become something more than a grieving mother. She had transformed into a symbol of human determination, traveling to facilities around the world, speaking to workers, engineers, and scientists. Her message was always the same. These are not just my children or your children. They are humanity's children. And we do not abandon our children. The first prototype ship, dubbed Hope's Dawn, completed its maiden voyage 6 months into the project. The quantum fold drive worked, sort of. The ship successfully traveled half a light year in 3 hours, though it emerged from the fold with half its hull plating missing and its crew temporarily blind from exotic radiation exposure. It's a start, Dr. Patel said optimistically as he watched the damaged ship limp back to the shipyard. At this rate, we'll kill ourselves before we save anyone, Webb muttered. But humanity persisted. Each test flight brought improvements. Each failure taught them something new. The quantum fold drive was refined, shielded, and improved. Weapons systems were designed that could theoretically punch through alien hull materials. Life support systems were created that could sustain crews for extended periods in deep space. 12 months into the project, Admiral Chin stood before the completed fleet. 5 ships, each one representing the pinnacle of human achievement and desperation. They were not beautiful vessels. They had been built for function over form, bristling with weapons and covered in the angular plating of the quantum fold generators. But they were fast, they were deadly, and they were humanity's only hope. The crews have been selected from volunteers, she announced to the assembled dignitaries and media. Every person on those ships knows they may not return. They've all signed up anyway. Among the crew of the flagship, Retribution, was Sarah Matthews. She had qualified as a systems operator after months of intensive training, driven by a determination that impressed even hardened military veterans. Ma'am, with respect, this is a military operation, Admiral Chun had argued when Sarah's application came across her desk. Admiral, every parent on this planet would volunteer for this mission if they could. I'm simply the one who actually can. Emma is somewhere out there, and I'll be damned if I'm going to wait on Earth while others risk their lives to save her. The night before launch, Sarah stood in the observation deck of the orbital shipyard, looking out at the stars. Dr. Hawthorne found her there, staring into the darkness where, somewhere, their children waited. Scared? Hawthorne asked. Terrified, Sarah admitted. but not of dying. I'm terrified we'll be too late. I'm terrified that when we get there, Emma won't remember me. I'm terrified that what they're doing to our children is something that can't be undone. Then, we make sure we're not too late. The launch was broadcast globally. Every television, every computer screen, every communication device on Earth carried the image of the 5 ships powering up their quantum fold drives. The energy requirements were so massive that they had to coordinate with power grids worldwide to avoid blackouts. Retribution, this is Control, came the voice from Earth. All systems show green. You're go for quantum fold in 30 seconds. Admiral Chun, commanding from the bridge of the Retribution, looked around at her crew. They were young and old, military and civilian from every nation on Earth. They were united by a single purpose: bring the children home. Quantum fold in 10 seconds. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Fold initiated. The ships vanished from Earth's sensors in a flash of exotic energy that briefly lit up the night sky. For the first time in over a year, humanity reached beyond their own solar system with purpose and power. 12 hours later, they emerged in the Kepler 442 system, and what they found there would test every limit of human endurance and rage. The human fleet materialized in the Kepler 442 system like ghosts emerging from a nightmare. The quantum fold drives powered down with a harmonic hum that seemed to echo through the vacuum of space itself. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, staring at the tactical display that painted a picture of horror beyond imagination. "My God," whispered Commander Torres from his position at the sensor station. "Admiral, you need to see this." The main screen filled with an image that would haunt the crews for the rest of their lives. Orbiting the Dead Star were not just ships, but massive industrial complexes the size of cities. Gleaming metal structures stretched for kilometers, connected by transport tubes and energy conduits. The scale was staggering. This wasn't just a military operation. It was an industrial empire built on the suffering of children. "How many ships?" Chen asked, her voice steady despite the rage building in her chest. 47 combat vessels detected, ranging from frigate to dreadnought class. But, Admiral, there are also 12 of those processing stations. Energy readings suggest they're all active. Sarah Matthews gripped her console until her knuckles turned white. Somewhere in those metal nightmares was her daughter Emma. "What are those stations doing?" she asked. Dr. Hawthorne, monitoring from the science station, looked up with tears in her eyes. Based on the energy signatures and thermal readings, they appear to be neurological processing facilities. The power requirements suggest they're conducting massive-scale brain surgery or neural modification. The bridge fell silent except for the hum of ship systems. Every person there understood the implications. The aliens weren't just holding the children prisoner. They were changing them, rewriting their minds, turning them into something else. "Communications, open a channel to the alien fleet," Chun ordered. "Channel open, Admiral." Chen's voice carried across space with the authority of a species that had just discovered its children were being tortured. "This is Admiral Rebecca Chun of the United Earth Defense Force. You have taken our children without provocation or communication. We demand their immediate return." The response came not in words, but in action. The alien fleet began moving into attack formation. High Commander Vexlani, aboard the Zalarian flagship, observed the arrival of the human vessels with mild interest. 5 primitive ships against the might of the collective fleet. It was almost insulting that they had bothered to come. Subcommander Krill, status of the neural reconstruction process. Approximately 60% complete, Commander. The human younglings have proven more adaptable than expected. Their neuroplasticity is remarkable. Once processing is complete, they will make excellent additions to our workforce. Vexlani's 4 eyes gleamed with satisfaction. "How many have we lost during the process?" "Acceptable losses, Commander. Perhaps 10% fatality rate during neural reconstruction. The survivors will more than compensate for our investment." The casual discussion of child mortality sent a chill through the bridge, but to the Zalarians, it was simply business. They had performed this operation on dozens of species over the millennia. The process was efficient, profitable, and necessary for the expansion of the collective. "Commander, the human vessels are powering weapons," reported the tactical officer. "Destroy them," Vexlani ordered without emotion. "But leave one intact. I want to study their primitive technology before we process their homeworld." The first battle began with a thunderclap of energy weapons that lit up the dead system like a newborn star. The alien fleet moved with coordinated precision, their weapon systems far more advanced than anything in humanity's arsenal. But the human ships had advantages the aliens hadn't expected. Evasive maneuvers, pattern delta. Chun commanded as plasma bolts seared through the space where retribution had been moments before. The human ships were smaller, faster, and built with one purpose: to get close enough to the processing stations to save the children. Captain Williams, aboard the destroyer Defiance, opened fire with the ship's experimental rail gun batteries. The magnetic accelerators hurled tungsten projectiles at a significant fraction of light speed, and when they struck the alien frigate's shields, the results were spectacular. The enemy vessel's energy barriers flickered and failed under the kinetic assault. "Target their engines," Chun ordered. "We need to disable, not destroy. Those stations might have our children on board." The human fleet employed tactics that the Zolarians had never encountered. Instead of standing off and exchanging fire in the traditional manner of space combat, the human ships dove into close quarters, using their superior maneuverability to avoid the aliens' heavy weapons while targeting specific systems. Commander Torres, aboard the Vengeance, performed a maneuver that would be studied in tactical schools for generations. Using the ship's quantum full drive in short, controlled bursts, he essentially teleported his vessel behind the alien formation, appearing directly astern of their command ship. "Surprise, you alien bastards," he muttered as he opened fire with everything the ship had. But the aliens adapted quickly. Their shields reconfigured to handle kinetic impacts, and their targeting computers began predicting the human ship's evasive patterns. One by one, the human vessels began taking damage. The Defiance was the first to fall. A concentrated barrage from 3 alien cruisers overwhelmed its defensive systems, and the ship broke apart in a burst of atmosphere and debris. 37 souls lost in an instant, but their sacrifice allowed the Retribution to reach the first processing station. Sarah Matthews watched through the ship's cameras as they approached the massive alien structure. Up close, it was even more horrifying. The station was clearly designed for one purpose: the systematic processing of living beings. She could see transport tubes feeding into central chambers, conveyor systems moving between different sections, and the cold, industrial efficiency of a slaughterhouse. "I'm detecting human life signs throughout the station," Dr. Hawthorne reported. "Thousands of them, concentrated in the central processing areas." "Can we dock?" Chun asked. "Negative. The alien design is incompatible with our systems. We'll need to use the assault shuttles." As the human fleet fought desperately against overwhelming odds, Marine Colonel James Harrison prepared his assault teams for what might be a suicide mission. The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution: board the processing stations, locate the children, and extract them while under fire from the most advanced alien fleet ever encountered. "Listen up, Marines," Harrison addressed his troops as they suited up in the shuttle bay. "Those aliens made a mistake when they took our kids. They assumed we'd roll over and accept it. Today, we show them what happens when you threaten human children." The first assault shuttle to launch from the Retribution contained 12 Marines and Sarah Matthews, who had volunteered for the boarding party despite every regulation against civilian participation in combat operations. Admiral Chun had tried to stop her, but Sarah's argument was simple and irrefutable. "I know my daughter better than any Marine. If we find the children, I can identify Emma and help calm the others." The shuttle dove toward the processing station under a hail of defensive fire. The pilot, Lieutenant Commander Jackson, had to use every trick he knew to avoid the alien point defense systems. The shuttle's hull groaned under the stress as he performed maneuvers that pushed the small craft to its limits. 30 seconds to docking, Jackson called out as the station's hull filled their view. Marine Sergeant Rodriguez primed his cutting charges. Remember, we don't know what we're going to find in there. Stay together, watch your six, and get those kids out. The shuttle struck the station's hull with enough force to crack the ceramic armor plating. Immediately, Rodriguez's charges blew a hole large enough for the assault team to pour through. What they found inside defied every nightmare they had imagined. The interior of the station was a maze of corridors and chambers designed around alien physiology. The air was thick and humid, with a chemical smell that burned human lungs. Emergency lighting cast everything in an eerie blue glow, and the constant hum of machinery created an atmosphere of industrial hell. Life signs are stronger down this corridor, Sarah said, reading her handheld scanner. Emma, if you can hear Mommy, I'm coming for you. They found a first group of children in what appeared to be a holding area. Dozens of kids from all over Earth, sitting in strange alien chairs with neural interface devices attached to their heads. Their eyes were open but vacant, staring at nothing while alien machinery probed their minds. Jesus Christ, whispered Private Morgan. What are they doing to them? Dr. Chun, who had insisted on joining the assault team, immediately began examining the nearest child. Some kind of neural interface. It's mapping their brain patterns, possibly rewriting neural pathways. We need to disconnect them, but carefully. If we just yank these things off, we could cause permanent brain damage. While Dr. Chan worked to safely disconnect the children, the Marines established a defensive perimeter. The aliens had finally realized they had been boarded, and the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the corridors. Contact! Sergeant Rodriguez shouted as the first alien soldiers rounded the corner. They were tall, spindly creatures with 4 arms and mottled gray skin. Their weapons fired some kind of energy beam that left smoking holes in the walls where it struck. The firefight in the narrow corridors was brutal and chaotic. The Marines' kinetic weapons proved effective against alien armor, but the enemy had superior numbers and knew the layout of their own station. Meanwhile, Sarah searched frantically through the rows of unconscious children. She found kids she recognized from a school playground, neighbors' children, faces she had seen on missing person reports. But no Emma. She's not here, Sarah told Dr. Chen. Emma's not in this group. There are other chambers, Chen replied while working to disconnect another child. The scanner shows life signs throughout the station. Ma'am, we need to move, Rodriguez called out. More aliens incoming, and we're running low on ammo. The first group of rescued children had to be carried to the shuttle. The neural interfaces had left them unconscious but alive. As the Marines loaded the kids aboard, Sarah refused to leave. I'm not going back without Emma, she declared. Mrs. Matthews, this is not a discussion, Rodriguez said. We have orders to extract you with the first group. Then you'll have to shoot me, Sergeant, because I'm not leaving my daughter. Admiral Chen's voice crackled through their communications. All assault teams, the fleet is taking heavy casualties. We may not be able to maintain position much longer. The space battle had turned against the humans. 2 more ships had been destroyed, and the remaining vessels were badly damaged. But they had managed to disable several alien ships, and were holding position long enough for the rescue operations to continue. On the second processing station, another assault team had made a horrifying discovery. Marine Captain Foster reported to Admiral Chun with barely controlled rage. Admiral, this isn't just about enslaving the children. They're experimenting on them. Some of these kids have been surgically altered. The aliens are trying to make them into something else. The revelation sent shockwaves through the human fleet. The aliens weren't just taking their children. They were transforming them into alien-human hybrids for purposes no one wanted to imagine. Back on the first station, Sarah's team had penetrated deeper into the facility. The corridors became more organic in appearance, with strange growths covering the walls and a sticky substance coating the floor. The air grew thicker and more toxic, forcing them to use emergency breathing apparatus. Life signs are stronger ahead, Dr. Chun reported through her mask. Massive concentration of human neural activity. They emerged into a vast chamber that stretched beyond the range of their lights. Thousands of children hung, suspended in transparent tubes filled with alien fluid. Neural cables ran from their heads to massive processing computers that hummed with malevolent energy. It was a factory for stealing souls. Emma, Sarah screamed, her voice echoing through the chamber. She ran between the tubes, searching desperately for her daughter's face among the thousands of suspended children. The Marines spread out to establish security while Dr. Chun began analyzing the alien systems. "This is beyond anything we imagined," she said. "They're not just rewriting memories. They're creating an entirely new species. Human intelligence combined with alien conditioning and biological modifications." Sarah found Emma in tube number 2847. Her 7-year-old daughter floated in the alien fluid, her face peaceful as if sleeping, but covered with strange markings where alien technology had been grafted onto her skin. "Get her out," Sarah demanded, pounding on the tube with her fists. "Get my baby out of there." "I can't just drain the tube," Dr. Chen explained. "The children are in some kind of alien coma. If we extract them wrong, the shock could kill them. I need time to understand the system." "We don't have time," Rodriguez reported. "Alien reinforcements are massing outside the chamber. They're going to try to retake this area." The sound of combat grew closer as more alien soldiers poured into the facility. The Marines were holding them off, but barely. Every second counted, and they had thousands of children to save. Admiral Chin's voice came through their communications again, strained with exhaustion and grief. "All teams, prepare for emergency extraction. The fleet cannot hold position much longer. We've lost 3 ships, and the remaining vessels are critical." Dr. Chan worked frantically at the alien console, her fingers dancing over controls that felt designed for inhuman hands. "I think I understand their system," she said. "But if I shut down the wrong sequence, it could kill every child in here. And if we don't shut it down, they'll become alien slaves," Sarah replied. "Do it." The choice that Dr. Chun made in that moment would haunt humanity forever. With alien soldiers breaking through the Marine perimeter and the fleet falling back, she initiated an emergency shutdown of the entire neural processing system. The tubes began draining, and thousands of children began awakening from their alien nightmare. But the process was violent and uncontrolled. Some children emerged unchanged. Others bore the marks of partial transformation: alien eyes, modified neural systems, memories that belonged to no human child. Emma was among the changed ones. When Sarah pulled her daughter from the tube, the little girl looked at her with eyes that held an alien intelligence alongside human recognition. "Mommy," Emma whispered, but her voice carried harmonics that no human throat should produce. "The others, they showed me things. They're coming for Earth, Mommy. They're coming for everyone." As the human fleet retreated from the Kepler 442 system with their rescued children, they carried more than just survivors. They carried the knowledge that this was only the beginning. The aliens had revealed their intentions through their actions, and now humanity faced a choice: submit to eventual enslavement or prepare for a war that would determine the fate of both species. The children they had rescued were forever changed, caught between 2 worlds and carrying secrets that might be humanity's salvation or doom. And somewhere in the vast darkness of space, the Zalarian Collective was mobilizing forces that would make their first encounter look like a mere skirmish. The battle for humanity's children was over, but the war for humanity's future had only just begun. The return journey to Earth passed in a silence, broken only by the whispered conversations between the rescued children and their desperate parents. The human fleet limped home with 2 ships destroyed and the remaining 3 barely functional. But they carried something more precious than any technology: nearly 30,000 children, though not all of them came back the same. Sarah Matthews sat in the medical bay aboard the Retribution, watching her daughter Emma sleep in a biomonitoring cradle. The alien modifications were subtle, but undeniable. Emma's pupils had developed a slight hexagonal pattern, and when she spoke, her voice sometimes carried frequencies that human vocal cords shouldn't produce. Dr. Chun had explained that the neural modifications couldn't be reversed without risking Emma's life. The alien technology integrated with their developing nervous systems, Dr. Chin said softly as she updated Emma's medical chart. In some ways, these children now represent a bridge between our species. They retain their human emotions and memories, but they've gained abilities we don't fully understand. What kind of abilities? Sarah asked, though she wasn't sure she wanted to hear the answer. Enhanced spatial reasoning, improved pattern recognition, and, most disturbing of all, they seem to be receiving some kind of transmitted information. Emma and several other children have mentioned the others and have been drawing identical symbols they claim to remember from their dreams. As the fleet approached Earth, Admiral Chun received a priority communication from the Global Defense Council. The news was grim. Deep space monitoring stations had detected massive energy signatures moving toward the Sol system. The Zalarian Collective wasn't simply letting humanity escape with their prizes. They were coming to reclaim them and finish what they had started. Admiral, how many ships are we looking at? President Harrison asked from the secure communication link. Based on the energy readings, at least 200 vessels, including several ships that dwarf anything we encountered at Kepler 442. They'll reach Earth in approximately 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Earth's entire space-capable fleet had been reduced to 3 damaged ships, and now they face an armada that could burn their planet to ash. What about the children we rescued? Asked Dr. Elizabeth Warren, the newly appointed Secretary of Xenobiological Affairs. Do they have any information that might help us? That's where things get complicated, Admiral Chim replied. The children are experiencing what we can only describe as shared consciousness episodes. They're all drawing the same symbols, speaking words from the alien language, and, most importantly, they claim to understand Zalarian technology. Emma Matthews had become the most vocal of the hybrid children, as the medical staff had begun calling them. At 7 years old, she could explain complex alien engineering principles that baffled human scientists. But her knowledge came with a terrifying price. She also knew about the fleet coming to destroy Earth. They call it the final harvest, Emma told Dr. Chun during one of their sessions. The Zalarian Collective doesn't just want to enslave us. They want to transform our entire species into something that serves them better. The children were just the beginning. Emma, do you know how to stop them? The little girl looked at Dr. Chun with eyes that seemed far too old for her face. The others taught us many things during the neural reconstruction. They didn't mean to, but their machines connected us to their knowledge network. We know their weaknesses, but using that knowledge means becoming more like them. This revelation sparked intense debates among Earth's leaders. The hybrid children possessed information that could save humanity, but accessing it might require sacrificing their humanity in the process. Dr. Marcus Webb, who had led the Quantum Fold Development Project, found himself working with 10-year-old Michael Chun, no relation to Admiral Chin, who could somehow visualize the mathematical principles behind faster-than-light travel. The Zalarian Fold drives operate on a different principle than ours, Michael explained, while drawing equations that would have challenged university professors. They don't fold space-time. They phase through dimensional barriers. It's more efficient, but requires specific harmonic frequencies. Can you teach us to build ships using their principles? Webb asked. Michael's expression darkened. Yes, but doing so would require sacrificing humans to power the dimensional phase generators. The Zalarians use enslaved minds as living computers for their navigation systems. That's why they need so many children, not just as workers, but as components in their technology. The moral implications were staggering. To defeat the aliens, humanity might have to become as monstrous as their enemies. Meanwhile, other hybrid children were revealing different aspects of Zalarian technology. 14-year-old Ashley Rodriguez could somehow understand their weapon systems, while 8-year-old David Kim had gained insight into their shield technology. But the most disturbing revelation came from 12-year-old Jennifer Walsh, who had been one of the children furthest along in the neural reconstruction process. During a routine medical examination, she looked directly at Dr. Hawthorne and said, "The others made a mistake. They connected us to their knowledge, but they also connected us to their enemies." "Their enemies?" Hawthorne asked. "The Zalarian Collective has been conquering worlds for thousands of years, but they're not the only advanced species in the galaxy. There's another race, the Vrax Coalition, that has been fighting them for centuries. The others didn't mean to teach us about them, but we know where to find them." This information changed everything. Humanity wasn't alone in their fight against the Zalarians. But making contact with another alien species carried its own risks, especially when that contact would depend on the knowledge locked in the minds of traumatized children. President Harrison convened an emergency session of the Global Defense Council. Representatives from every major nation gathered in Geneva to debate humanity's response to the coming invasion. "We have three options," Admiral Chun addressed the assembly. "We can attempt to defend Earth with the technology we have, knowing that we'll likely lose. We can try to evacuate as many people as possible, though we have no idea where we'd go. Or we can use the knowledge gained by the hybrid children to either build better weapons or make contact with the Vrax Coalition." "And the cost of using that knowledge?" asked the Chinese representative. "Unknown, but potentially the sacrifice of our humanity. The children's abilities came at the price of neural modification. To fully access Zalarian technology, we might need to submit to the same process." The debate raged for hours. Some argued that survival justified any cost. Others maintained that becoming like the Zalarians would make victory meaningless. In the end, it was Sarah Matthews who provided the answer they needed. "You're all missing the point," she addressed the assembly, holding Emma's hand as her daughter stood beside her. "The children aren't just carriers of alien knowledge. They're living proof that humanity can adapt without losing its essential nature. Emma is still my daughter. She still loves ice cream and gets scared during thunderstorms. But now she also understands things that could save our world." "What are you proposing, Mrs. Matthews?" President Harrison asked. "Let the children teach us, but on their terms. They'll share what they know, but we won't force additional modifications on anyone. We'll work with what we have and find a way to win without becoming monsters." The plan that emerged combined human ingenuity with alien knowledge in ways that neither species had anticipated. The hybrid children became teachers, sharing their understanding of Zalarian technology, while human scientists and engineers found ways to adapt those principles to human physiology and ethics. Dr. Webb's team, working with Michael Chun, developed a new generation of quantum fold drives that could achieve dimensional phase without sacrificing human minds. The key was using quantum computers instead of living brains to handle the complex calculations required for interdimensional navigation. Meanwhile, Ashley Rodriguez helped weapons specialists design energy weapons that could penetrate Zalarian shields. Her knowledge revealed that the aliens' defensive systems had a critical vulnerability. They couldn't adapt to randomly modulated frequency attacks because their technology was designed around predictable patterns. Most importantly, Jennifer Walsh's information about the Vrax Coalition led to humanity's first attempt at interstellar diplomacy. Using coordinates pulled from alien memories, Earth sent a quantum fold message to the Vrax homeworld, explaining humanity's situation and requesting aid. The response came faster than anyone expected. The Vrax Coalition had been monitoring the Zalarian expansion for decades, and they had been waiting for a species to successfully resist neural reconstruction. Humanity's rescue of the children had proven that humans possessed the one quality the Vrax valued above all others: the willingness to sacrifice everything for their young. Captain Zarthex of the Vrax Expeditionary Fleet arrived at Earth 3 months before the Zalarian Armada was due. The first contact between humans and Vrax took place aboard the space station Terra Nova, with Admiral Chun representing humanity and young Jennifer Walsh serving as translator. The Vraks were unlike anything humans had imagined aliens would look like. They resembled giant crystalline spiders, but their communication methods were based on harmonic vibrations that the hybrid children could somehow understand and translate. Your species has impressed the Coalition, Zarthex communicated through Jennifer's translation. The Zalarians have conquered 47 worlds in the past millennium. You are the first to not only resist, but to rescue your young from neural reconstruction. This makes you valuable allies. Can you help us fight them? Admiral Chen asked. We can provide technology and tactical support, but the battle must be won by humanity itself. The Vraks Coalition learned long ago that species must prove their worth through their own actions. However, we can offer you something the Zalarians do not expect: knowledge of their greatest weakness. The weakness, it turned out, was the Zalarians' own success. Having conquered so many worlds through neural reconstruction, they become dependent on enslaved minds to operate their most advanced systems. Their fleet approaching Earth relied on millions of processed beings from dozens of species to function as living computers. If those enslaved minds could be freed, even temporarily, their fleet would become vulnerable, Zarthex explained. The hybrid children of your species might be able to transmit a liberation signal that could disrupt the neural control systems across their entire armada. But the plan carried enormous risks. Using the children as transmitters for a psychic attack on the Zalarian fleet could burn out their modified neural pathways, possibly killing them or leaving them permanently brain damaged. When Sarah Matthews learned about the plan, her reaction was immediate and fierce. No, absolutely not. We didn't rescue Emma just to sacrifice her in some desperate gambit. Mom, Emma said quietly, her young voice carrying the weight of knowledge no child should possess. The enslaved minds in the Zalarian ships, they're not just aliens. There are human children who were taken before our rescue mission. Kids from other worlds the Zalarians conquered. If we don't try to free them, they'll be enslaved forever. The moral complexity of the situation tore at Sarah's heart. Her daughter was asking to risk her life to save children she had never met, children from worlds she had never seen. Emma, you're 7 years old. This shouldn't be your decision to make. But it is, Mom. We're the only ones who can reach the enslaved minds. The other hybrid kids, and we've talked about it. One try. The final battle for Earth began not with explosions and laser fire, but with children holding hands in a circle aboard the space station Terra Nova. 37 hybrid children, ranging in age from 6 to 15, linked their modified neural pathways to attempt something that had never been tried before: a psychic revolution across interstellar space. Emma Matthews was at the center of the circle, her small hand gripping those of her friends as they prepared to either save two species or die in the attempt. Around them, the combined human-Vraks fleet prepared for a battle that would determine the fate of human civilization. The Zalarian armada dropped out of fold space with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. High Commander Vexlani aboard his flagship observed the pathetic human defense force with amusement. A few dozen primitive ships against the might of the collective. It would be over in minutes. Begin primary bombardment, he ordered. Target their military installations first. We want the planet intact for processing. But as the first energy beams reached toward Earth, something unprecedented happened. Across the Zalarian fleet, enslaved minds began to wake up. The psychic signal transmitted by the hybrid children spread through the collective's neural network like wildfire. In thousands of ships, millions of processed beings suddenly remembered who they used to be. The Zalarian systems, dependent on compliant slave minds, began to fail as their living computers rebelled. What is happening? Vexlani demanded as his ship's navigation systems shut down. Commander, we're losing neural control across the fleet. The processed minds are resisting their conditioning. On Terra Nova, Emma Matthews screamed as alien thoughts flooded through her consciousness. She was connected to every enslaved mind in the Zalarian fleet, feeling their pain, their joy at remembering freedom, and their desperate desire for revenge against their captors. The battle that followed was unlike anything in the history of space warfare. Zalarian ships turned on each other as freed slave minds seized control of weapon systems. Human and Vrax vessels darted through the chaos, targeting command ships while the alien fleet destroyed itself from within. But the psychic assault was taking its toll on the hybrid children. One by one, they began collapsing as their modified neural pathways overloaded. Sarah Matthews watched in horror as her daughter's eyes rolled back, and blood began trickling from her nose. "Emma!" she screamed, reaching for her daughter. "Don't break the circle," Dr. Chun ordered. "If they lose the connection now, the freed minds will be recaptured." For 17 minutes, the hybrid children maintained their psychic link while the greatest space battle in human history raged around Earth. When it finally ended, the Zalarian Collective's invasion fleet was either destroyed or under the control of the beings they had once enslaved. High Commander Vexlani found himself facing a firing squad of his former slaves, beings from a dozen different species who had finally remembered what freedom felt like. His last thought before execution was bewilderment that such a primitive species had accomplished what seasoned civilizations could not. Of the 37 children who participated in the psychic assault, 31 survived. The 6 who died became heroes of humanity, remembered for sacrificing their futures to save 2 worlds. Emma Matthews was among the survivors, though the effort had burned away most of her alien modifications, leaving her more human than hybrid. In the months that followed, Earth became the center of a new galactic alliance. The freed beings from the Zalarian fleet chose to stay and help rebuild, sharing their knowledge and skills with humanity. The Vrax Coalition offered Earth membership as a full partner, recognizing humans as a species capable of extraordinary compassion and courage. Sarah Matthews often found herself sitting with Emma in the observation deck of Terra Nova, looking out at the stars that no longer seemed quite so alien or threatening. Her daughter was still different. She could remember languages from a dozen worlds and sometimes spoke with the wisdom of someone much older, but she was still fundamentally Emma. "Do you ever regret what happened?" Sarah asked during one of their quiet moments. Emma considered the question seriously, as she considered all questions now. "I regret that the others had to die. I regret that any of us had to go through the neural reconstruction. But I don't regret that we stopped the Zalarians. There are billions of children on hundreds of worlds who will grow up free because of what we did. And the nightmares? They're getting better. Dr. Chun says the alien memories will fade with time, but the knowledge we gained will stay. I think that's fair." As the two of them watched ships from a dozen different species dock at the station, Sarah reflected on how much had changed. Humanity had faced its greatest test and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. They had learned that sometimes the price of preserving innocence was accepting that innocence must sometimes be sacrificed. But they had also learned that courage, love, and the refusal to abandon one's children were universal values that could bridge any gap between species. The hybrid children had become living symbols of humanity's greatest strength, the ability to adapt and grow without losing the essential qualities that made them human. The war with the Zalarian Collective was over, but humanity's journey among the stars had only begun. And leading that journey were a group of children who had paid the ultimate price to ensure that no species would ever again face the horror of neural reconstruction. Emma Matthews fell asleep in her mother's arms as ships from across the galaxy traveled through the space around Earth, carrying beings of every description who had come to thank the species that had freed them from slavery. In her dreams, the little girl who had once been afraid of monsters under her bed now dreamed of building bridges between worlds and ensuring that no child, human or alien, would ever again face the darkness alone. The universe was vast and full of wonders and terrors, but Humanity had proven that with courage, determination, and love for their children, they could face anything the stars might hold.